welcome to Spa-Francorchamps, round 2 of the 2017 FIA World Endurance Championship. And as the Belgian Red Devils fly overhead, packed grandstands in beautiful weather conditions, we are ready for the final dress rehearsal for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Welcome everybody, I'm Martin Haven. Alongside me, world champion Le Mans winner, Alan McNish, and we'll be joined as ever by Louise Beckett down on the grid. Alan, Spa, a fabulous location for a race anyway, but the weather today just crowning that.
It's absolutely glorious, the sun's shining and so many fans out there sitting in the stands, but also outside on the actual grass bankings, just enjoying the beautiful view of the circuit on its own, never mind before it kicks off with all these racing cars.
Second round of the championship, the third of course is the big one, the one on which the entire championship hangs its hat, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But this is the last chance for teams to really collate what they've learned in testing, what their simulation, what their wind tunnels have told them, and try and make that a real-life fact. 7 kilometers in the footsteps of the old historic track here, which was twice the length and twice as deadly. Last year's winners, Lucas de Grassi, Loic Duval and Ollie Jarvis winning for Audi outright in the LMP1 class. We will have either a Toyota or a Porsche winning this season. And the interest behind will be what happens in the GT and the LMP2 classes. Well, let's get down to the grid with Louise Beckett.
Hello and welcome to a packed out grid here in Spa. The temperature is rising and that's very different to all of the sessions we've had so far this weekend. But before we get into that and the race, let's take a look at the qualifying highlights.
Qualifying as ever in 2 groups, with the GT cars separated from the LMP cars, and in cool conditions. Track temperatures were about 16 degrees. It had been overcast for the entire run-up to qualifying through free practice, so the teams at least knew what to expect and where they were. In the AM category, a battle initially between the Porsches and the Aston Martins, and then Pedro Lamy sent out for one final run after the 2 drivers had completed their run, and he claimed a stunning pole position, the single fastest Aston Martin lap to take the AM pole. In the Pro class, Ford again looking strong, Ferrari and Porsche also battling for the lead of this group. Sam Bird and Davide Rigon coming out on top in the number 71A, of course a Ferrari, but Ford taking positions 2 and 3 in the class.
This green LMP qualifying session has started for 25 minutes.
LMP2.
Remind your drivers to adhere to track limits.
LMP2 undergoing a near total revamp over the winter. The new Gibson engine giving the drivers getting on for 150 horsepower more than before, and meaning that their lap times were slashed nearly 6 seconds quicker. And the battle raged between the expected protagonists, the Signatech Alpine team eventually being outpaced by G-Drive to claim their first pole of the season in LMP2. And then added fascination from Toyota, a 3rd car in full Le Mans low drag downforce setup. The number 9 car setting the fastest individual lap in a qualifying session that did not go Toyota's way. Spinning cars, dramas with mechanical problems for the number 8, and that meant that Porsche's number 1 car came out on top using their 3-driver lineup that we'll see at Le Mans. Neil Jani, Andre Lotterer and Nick Tandy claiming pole position at the start. They will be the car that leads the field around Spa-Francorchamps. What a stunning view today. So often this track is beset by problems with weather. There was forecast for rain late on in the race, but it seems as though that even is now fading. Man who's got plenty of history here, down on the grid with Louise Beckett, Australia's Mark Webber.
Well, look who I've stumbled across. It's lovely to see you. Are you missing us?
Of course, yeah. Not so much the racing, to be honest, because yeah, I'm in a different phase now. But it's great to be back here. Obviously, the crowd's mega. The weather's awesome. Spa is sensational in terms of for the drivers to have a consistent race in terms of conditions is really nice. So looking forward to seeing the sensational battle, obviously with the P1 guys. Porsche and Toyota looks really tight, and obviously we've got our fantastic 911 here, our GT car trying to take on obviously Ferrari and Ford. So we're looking forward to seeing how the whole race goes. It's a long one, but it's good to be back here.
You know Spa well. What can these guys expect over these 6 hours?
Well, clearly, as usual, traffic will be a role for the P1 cars when they come around for the first few laps on that. And then trying to make the tyres. It sounds a little bit boring, but it's not. The drivers are going to really push as hard as possible, but then find the right balance to really get the most out of trying to double stint some of these tyres and getting the car in a good window for the second part of the stint. So that's when the race will really come alive, a bit of strategy, but I really predict super, it'll be tight. It's going to be really tight all the way to the end. So, yeah, awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thanks, Mark. Good to see you.
Educated observers, and delighted to have the most educated observer alongside Alan McNish. Alan, Louise talking about the weather. It is fabulous. I mean, that's great for the fans, especially great for the teams, great for the pictures. Photographers will be loving this. But what does it do for the teams? Because we've got more than double the track temperature now than we started in qualifying and all through free practice, and that's only going to rise.
Yeah, the air temperature's up a little bit. It's nice and warm and sunny. I'm in, you know, a short sleeve shirt basically. But the track temperature has gone from about 14 degrees yesterday up to 28 and climbing. You know, it's 2 o'clock local time in the afternoon here, and it'll get a little bit warmer. And so what they're going to have is a tyre that works in a completely different way, and as well with the drop-off of temperature through this race, because it finishes in 6 hours, so it's going to be 8:30 at night when the track will be completely different again. However, they're in uncharted territory because they've done all their setup work and their longevity on the tyres in much colder conditions, more like it's going to be at the end of the race, as opposed to these much hotter conditions now. So I'm quite interested to see the second stint on the tyre and how people are able to cope with that, drivers and cars. And
you can't just throw new tyres at the car, because you've only got 4 sets for qualifying and the race in the GTs and the LMP2s, so that the rules are designed that you can't just keep throwing tyres at the car, so you can't solve it that way. You've got to work with what you've got.
Yeah, you know, there's a restriction and an increased restriction this year between the actual number of tyres, so it's 4 sets, as you said, and 2 joker tyres, which we saw at Silverstone. The left front was the one that was getting attacked a lot, so they were changing that very often. And then in the Pro-Am category in GT, you've got 6 sets, because it just gives it a little bit wider scope. And so that means you have to double stint tyres through the course of this race. That second stint, that will be one of the big keys between the battle at the front between Porsche and Toyota.
And the same in the GT classes and in LMP2 as well. Looking here at the 77 Proton Dempsey Racing Porsche. This is the car that lines on second in the AM class. Christian Reed, for a lot of free practice, was the fastest of all GT cars. There's Tom Christensen in the jacket in the centre of your shot. He's got a bit of history with sports car racing as well, so...
Yeah, I met him once or twice on a few dummy grids, and also a few driver changes along the way as well.
Hoiking him out of the car. And our pole sitter in the GTE Pro class, Louise Beckett asking, was Tom normally on time? And the answer was no, he never was. In the GTE Pro class, stunning lap from Pedro Lamy, talking to Aston Martin's John Gore, saying that he was 15 kilometres an hour quicker into Eau Rouge on his final attempt to grab pole in the AM class. And there was a bit of a penalty clause for Lamy if he didn't grab pole. Now, I probably can't mention that on air, but if you take a look on the online reports later, I'm sure that will filter its way in through the internet. So, yeah, Lamy was under moral pressure to qualify on the AM class pole. Done a great job there with the Aston Martin.
Yeah, but he had to be honest, because he had been penalised for track limits on his previous lap. So if he hadn't have delivered in that final lap, I'm sure the debrief later on would have been a little bit more terse. Absolutely. But that was his 15th pole position in GTE AM. Unbelievable. No one else on the grid in GTE AM has scored more than 1. So he's kind of Mr. Pole there.
Now, that's astonishing that nobody else has got even a second, never mind into double figures. That's ridiculous. Also, a couple of landmarks here. Darren Turner making his 60th official start for AMR. and that's aside from customer cars and anything else. So that's some sort of landmark. Darren Turner and Andre Lotterer now are the only drivers who have done every single World Endurance race. So, do you know what? I'm liking the new hairstyles there in the autograph session Stefan Sarazan creating for everybody. Maybe they can get some wigs made up like that before we get to our next race at Le Mans. So into the GT grid, and the Porsche versus Ferrari versus Ford versus Aston Martin battle. This is going to be interesting because this new Porsche for this year is still very much an unknown in terms of what its real potential is, and even for the team. You know, you design a car and you hope you're going to get somewhere, but then you've got to prove it, and you've got to learn how to work with it in different conditions.
Well, Porsche do have a little bit of experience in this category. It's not the first time they've designed and built a car for it, but the new 911 RSR is quite a departure from previous 911s because it's more of a mid-engine car as opposed to the rearward engine position. It's more very similar, in fact, to the Ford GT that we're looking at now, the car 67th that qualified third in the hands of Andy Prio and Harry Tinknell. And so far, we've seen it sort of being quick on occasion, the Porsche, but not quick in qualifying. 2 seconds off the pole yesterday. I don't believe they're 2 seconds off being fast enough, but they're still sort of learning about it, and I don't think we've seen their full hand, as you'd said.
Well, you know, from the days that you raced at Porsche and long before, there was one top of the pyramid, and that's what all attention was on, and that's the next race that we get to in the middle of June. And so everything before and after is leading up to Le Mans. As you said, the 67 Ford, the second quickest of the Fords, out-qualified by the 66 car, Stefan Mucker, Olivier Pla, and Billy Johnson, the third driver, the American who made his debut in the World Endurance Championship last time out at Silverstone. Flags of Nations looking down into the fan village as well. And back to the grid with car number 71, AF Corsa's two-driver lineup here. Of course, there will be a third driver for Le Mans, but not being brought into either of the AF Corsa cars. Davide Rigon and Sam Bird, again out-qualifying their teammates, James Collado and Alessandro Pierguidi. Collado this morning saying they weren't really quite sure why their car didn't seem to have the pace of the 71 car. 51, nominally, historically, sort of the lead AF Corsa car, but that has definitely seen a bit of a sea change.
I think that is one thing that was quite clear, is that the Ferrari was able to step it up, both cars, when it came to free practice 3. They did a qualifying simulation, delivered a lap time that we went, ooh, that's fast, and then delivered it again in the race, in qualifying, and no one was able to keep up. The race itself, then I think it's going to be a much more difficult affair for them, but they are in much better conditions, in the hotter conditions that we have now.
Just saw some of the Porsche LMP drivers, new teams of the championship this weekend. Tocqueville Motorsports cut their teeth in LMP3 in the European Le Mans Series last year. And the Tocqueville Motorsport team making their World Endurance Championship debut in the LMP2 class. The only Ligier chassis in the LMP2 field here. Karun Chandok is the experienced World Endurance driver here, and he's joined by Philip Hansen, or he joins Philip Hansen and Nigel Moore, who have raced with Tocqueville. Both of them are silver-rated drivers. Karun is gold. One single car here now. You can see in the shades there, Ollie Webb, the driver of the Bicoles racing team. One single non-hybrid car. The Austrian team entering this car again for Ollie Webb, Dodo Kreiheimer and James Rossiter. And that is an LMP1 car. Rebellion have moved from LMP1 independence into the LMP2 category. They've got a couple of LMP2 cars and are thoroughly enjoying actually having somebody to race. Whereas before, when you're up against the might of the factory teams in LMP1, Alan McNish, you're following them around because, yeah, you can't compete with the size of Audi, Porsche, Peugeot, you know, and so on.
No, but I tell you, this year, that LMP2 battle that we're looking at with Nelson Piquet Jr. just walking through the shot there with the various teams that have merged into it is an almighty battle. The top 4 cars on the grid were covered by less than 1/10 of a second. Now, that isn't just their ultimate time, that's their average time, and it sort of bodes well for a bit of a scrap this afternoon. It was a real dogfight at Silverstone, and one that was actually, I would say, won by a little bit of thought process of not necessarily being the fastest car on circuit, but actually being the best car over the course of the race, and that was Jota Sport that worked it out. In fact, this team here that were the ones that delivered the goods at Silverstone. Will they be able to do it again? I think it's going to be a tougher task for them.
Just looking at the 4th place car in the LMP2 field. Manor with 2 cars here. One of them crashed yesterday in the beginning of prototype qualifying, just 4 and a bit minutes into the session. Vitaly Petrov stuck the car off the road, and apparently his comment to the team later was, "Oh yeah, that's where I crashed in Formula 1." I'm not sure where they went after that. It leaves you nowhere to go, does it? But
at least he's consistent.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
At least he's consistent.
You could see from his body language he was very unhappy with himself. Alpine return again. Now this chassis, although it's named an Alpine chassis, of course Renault's sub-brand now, sporting sub-brand, is in fact the same as all the other Orica chassis. It's the same, just has 2 chassis plates. One is Orica chassis number and one is Alpine chassis number.
Yeah, and jumping into that car is a man that we know very well, Romain Dumas, who has joined this team for this race and also for the Le Mans 24 hours potentially because of change around there. But, you know, he's a guy that will bring a lot of understanding and experience. Not the team needs it, because I tell you, they are one of the top teams in the category without a question. But Romain does bring a sort of calming influence, even although he's quite an emotional character.
And brings a whole load of speed as well. Pole sitter in the LMP2 class, wearing the familiar orange colours of G-Drive, not being run by Jota Sport this season, so a change of engineering personnel and a change of driver lineup as well. Roman Rusanov, Pierre Thirier being joined by Alex Lynn, the team who are running it, Thirier by TDS. You'll know them from European Le Mans Series. So TDS Racing running that G-Drive car. Alex Lynn turning into Mr. Super Sub. One of the reasons he's in is because the other driver at Silverstone, Mathieu Vazivière, injured his foot, broke bones in his foot, Alan, leaping over a stream while he was out running. And he's not the only man missing from the grid either. Jose Maria Lopez out of his Toyota drive this weekend because of a knock-on back injury from that crash he had at Silverstone.
Well, it was a heavy impact at Copse Corner at Silverstone where he had a head-on impact with the tyre barrier, and that, as we spoke to him yesterday night, has crushed the vertebra a little bit in his back. And medically, they said absolutely no. It was a decision by the doctors to say, you're not ready. Even although he wanted to race, and the driver's passion, there he is there with the sunglasses on and not the overalls. Yeah. And I can tell you, being in the same position one time in the past, it's so frustrating because you feel you want to get in there, the adrenaline's in there, but you know you're not your body's engineer. That's the doctor. You let an engineer engineer the car, you let the doctor engineer your body, and he will hopefully be back in time for Le Mans. That's his focus.
Yeah, no question. And whether or not he races next weekend as well is entirely down to whether the doctors think that will in any way impede his ability to be ready for Le Mans. That's the big one for the team, it's the big one for the drivers and for the fans, and of course it's what gives us the rules, the regulations and the thrill of endurance sports car racing. So the number 7 car is a 2-driver lineup, Mike Conway and Kamui Kobayashi. And Jose Maria Lopez will be watching them. He's here because he'll be in the garage with the team with a headset on, following the race, trying to get his head around all the nuances the same way that we do, but of course with an awful lot of information. So the team's lining up on the grid behind the Porsche, the number 1 car that starts in position number 1, pole for the 6 hours of Spa. And the grandstand's absolutely packed opposite us. And I'm not surprised there's a lot of people there in the shade because it's been a long, hot morning. Mike Conway helmeting up to get into his Toyota. Car he shares with Kamui Kobayashi, the number 7 car. Toyota, as we said, with 3 cars here. Number 8 car is the regular 3-driver lineup, Sebastian Buemi, Anthony Davidson and Kazuki Nakajima. And their 3rd car, car number 9, in full Le Mans spec, we believe, with Stéphane Sarrazin, Nico Lapierre and new boy Yuji Kunimoto.
notre sang aux patries. Nous le jurons tous, tu vivras toujours grande et belle, et notre invincible unité aura pour devise immortelle le roi, la loi, la liberté. Aura pour devise immortelle le roi, la loi, la liberté. Le roi, la loi, la liberté. Le roi, la loi, la liberté.
The Belgian national anthem, signalling that we are now into the final preparation stage for the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, round 2 of the 2017 FIA World Endurance Championship. Tyre trolleys being run out onto the grid. Cars have not done a lap yet. They've been pushed out onto the grid in this herringbone formation, and as you can see, transport tyres, or wets, as you would normally refer to them, being used just to roll the car around. And now you can see the teams cantering down with their tyres fresh out of the ovens. And every second they're out of the oven, they're losing a fraction of that core temperature that has been so neatly built up in a way that even Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood would envy over the run-up to the race. And Alan, you know, you get in your road car, whatever the weather is, you just get in and you go away and drive it, and it does what it does. With a racing car, it's hard to overstate how absolutely critical to its performance tyre temperature and tyre pressure are. We talk about it a lot, but as a driver, it's the difference between making it round a corner and being in a huge crash.
Well, the warming up lap here is very, very important. There's a lot of information coming from the team to the driver to verify exactly what's going on, because the car needs to be prepared, and that means that the driver needs to work to keep the tyre temperature up, to keep the tyre pressure up, to make sure the hybrid system is fully charged, and that is got to be done in a very, very strict period of time, as well as the brake temperatures, because when they barrel into the first corner here at the source, or go through Eau Rouge with a big compression there, if one or other thing is out, then yes, you can make a mistake, and ultimately, if you lose track position, it's not ideal.
No, especially if it means you're also in the barriers somewhere. Well, the grid is being cleared. The second and third drivers from the cars, the engineers, all wishing their men the very best of luck. Andre Lotterer in a position with which he's very familiar, starting races from the front of the grid. He's the man who gets the race underway in the #1 Porsche, the pole sitter for the 6 hours of Spa. And his teammates, Nilchani, Nick Tandy, will do their stints. We expect that Lotterer will do a double stint, as probably will everybody else at the beginning of the race, unless something weird and wonderful happens. Wonderful views from the helicam on board the 38 Jackie Chan DC racing car. Again, familiar helmet livery, Ollie Jarvis finding a berth at that team. Romain Dumas, his former teammate, further up the grid. We saw him getting into the 36 Senior Tech car. Here's the #9 Toyota. This is going to be fascinating to watch what that car does. Temperature has changed so much, it's going to reduce grip a little, and that car in full low downforce, low drag Le Mans mode. Be interesting to see how they fare.
Well, I think generally that's exactly what Toyota are thinking. How's this going to fare? Because, you know, you can do all the testing in the world, but racing is actually where it's at. That's when it exposes the weaknesses, the small cracks, the things that maybe you've got to consider before going to Le Mans. Hence the reason they brought that third car here, not in the optimum performance package for Spa, but it is for Le Mans. And I would expect that car to actually be quite competitive, maybe surprise a few people as well. We saw it did the fastest lap of anyone in qualifying yesterday.
So that car will start third place on the grid, in fact, because the qualifying was the average of the best lap of each of 2 drivers from the car. So yes, it set the outright fastest lap. Stéphane Sarrazin got that out of the car, but then in the interrupted qualifying, teammate Nico Lapierre, who starts the car, didn't quite manage to match it. You're just on board there with Brendan Hartley, #2 Porsche team, 5th on the grid.
1 minute board on the grid. 1 minute board on the grid. You may start your engines now. 1 minute board on the grid. Please clear the grid as soon as possible. Please clear the grid as soon as possible.
So the command given by race director Eduardo Freitas to start engines, and hopefully everybody will be able to comply, not necessarily a given in a modern racing car. And Tom Christensen is the man who will wave the green flag.
30 seconds
I gather
board on the grid. 30 seconds board on the grid.
The other Mr. Le Mans, Jackie Ickx, was also down on the grid today. Of course, one of Belgium's most famous sporting stars. So the Red Devils in their BAE Tucanos, the Belgian Air Force national display team, have moved away. And Tom Christensen holding traffic. There's a job.
Green flag on the grid.
Picture him with white gloves.
Mr. Tom Christensen waving the green flag on the grid for the start of the formation lap for the 6 hours of Spa. Formation lap is on the road.
Fantastic sight as our whole field rolls away. 30 cars in 4 different classes, combining all sorts of future and current road and race car technology. And for all these teams, all these drivers, this race represents the final chance to really try and answer some of the imponderable questions before we get to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But it's more than just that, because every time you come and race at Spa, it is an epic adventure. It's such a phenomenal driver's circuit, challenges the drivers, challenges the cars, and classic circuit often produces classic racing. Ford with a slender lead in the GT Manufacturers Championship over Ferrari. Porsche and Aston Martin just 2 points apart, but need a good result here. Looking there at our LMP2 class leader on the grid, the G-Drive car, 2 Signatech Alpines behind, and then the better of the 2 Manor cars. The Rebellion machines, 13 and 31, wearing the colours of comic book hero Michel Vaillant. Anybody born in a French-speaking country from the 60s on will know his adventures as well as they know Lucky Luke or Tintin. Michel Vaillant, the original creator and cartoonist. Michel Graton passed away a few years ago, but his son Jean continues the tradition, and the Vaillant adventures continue to this day. Andre Lotterer in the #1 Porsche, leading the field down towards the double left-hander of Pouin, halfway round the formation lap for the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps. And behind him on the grid, the Toyotas, Mike Conway in car #7, #9, Nico Lapierre, and #8, Sebastian Buemi. G-Drive's Roman Rusinov starts the LMP2 pole sitter from 8th on the grid with a pair of Signatech Alpines and lots of speed right behind. Bumper field in the LMP2 category, and all of them this year with the brand new Gibson engine, a full-fledged race engine that's now producing around 650 horsepower in predominantly a field of Oreca chassis, with one Ligier as well, entered by new team Tocqueville Motorsports. And then into the GT field, Davide Rigon's AF Corsa #71 Ferrari, the pole sitter from the Ford of Olivier Pla. His teammate Harry Tinknell, and AF Corsa's James Collado, row 2 of the GTE Pro class. Best of the Porsches on row 3. Richard Leitz ahead of Kevin Estre in number order. The Dane train with Nicky Team starting 95 ahead of 97, started by Johnny Adam. And then into the AM class, Pedro Lami's Aston on pole ahead of Christian Reed's Dempsey Proton Porsche. And then the Ferraris of Spirit of Race and Clearwater Racing. Final row of the grid has the Gulf Racing Porsche and the crashed Manor, which was dropped to the back of the grid, not setting a qualifying time.
And in 4, Porsche behind you is also on a used tires. Porsche behind you is also on a used tires.
a little bit of direct information, final information to the driver there about the tyres the competitors are on. It's good to understand what they're going to be able to do on that first lap as they now come down to the bus stop chicane, and they have to now be in file line by line as they come to that. Then the pace car will peel off, and then we're rocking and rolling.
Getting ready for the final showdown before Le Mans, the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps, race 2 of the 2017 World Endurance Championship. Car number 1, Andre Lotterer, driving the world champions Porsche, and then 3 Toyotas ganging up behind him, a massive LMP2 field, all jockeying for position. Red lights on, and away we go. The field is underway for the 6 hours of Spa. The number 9 Toyota lunges immediately to the inside. Monster lockup, disappears off towards France, and he wasn't the only one either. The second Toyota there, that was the number 7 car, also went in so deep. And I think that makes Andre Lotterer the leader ahead of Toyota number 8, Sebastian Buemi, taking up second place. The number 9 car rejoins just ahead of our LMP2 field. The GT cars further back.
And he's got you could see the vibration there on the 9. That's the car that had the lockup, and so I wouldn't be surprised if he had a little bit of a flat spot there, as there's a bit of ducking and diving. He's got massive straight line speed advantage in comparison to the Porsche, as there's a little bit of a squeeze here between the Collis car and some of the LMP2s jockeying for position. They've got different straight line speed and corner speed advantages in that battle.
That orange and white car, Jean-Eric Verne, defending against the grey and silver. That's James Rossiter starting the Bicolles car. Right behind him, the first of the Vaillant cars, Nelson Piquet Jr. starting the number 13 Rebellion. And for all of these drivers, Alan, the first lap is a chance to try and make up places, but it's also a lap where you can knock off important dive planes and all of those aero aids, so you've got to be really cautious about avoiding contact.
Well, one person that's definitely avoided everything, he avoided that lunge at the start, is Andre Lotterer, who's also just used the opportunity to have a bit of clean air, not have to look in his mirrors, and blasted a gap already just over 1.5 seconds.
And the top 5 in the GTE Pro class are as they were on the grid. Davide Rigon's Ferrari ahead of 66 Oli Pla, 67 the second of the red, white and blue Fords, Harry Tincknell, then James Calado's Ferrari in 4th position in that Pro class. Clinging to them, Richard Leitz. Now here's the Porsche number 2 trying to come back underneath the number 7 car of Mike Conway. Toyota lying 2nd and 3rd, Andre Lotterer 1.4 seconds clear at the line, very nearly 1.5 seconds clear. And although he was kicking up dust on the exit of a couple of corners, Lotterer now with his head down and charging. And down here at La Source, he was like a bullfighter, wasn't he? He just whipped the cape out of the way and allowed the number 9 car to go straight by him like a rocket.
Yeah, well, the number 9, he's on that low downforce, clearly didn't quite have the tyre temperature as well, and the brakes locked up very quickly, and that locked his tyre, and the best thing he could do was go straight on. Here we can see that Collis battle still continuing. It's only car in its own particular category there, but he's got to be careful because he's quick on the straights, but really not slower than the LMP2s. Sorry, not faster than the LMP2s in the corners.
And there is the battle for the lead. The G-Drive car, the orange machine, Roman Rusinov versus world champion Romain Dumas. And Dumas in the 36. First of the 2 Cinetec Alpine cars. Now 2 cars were forced to do a drive-through penalty after qualifying for using their laser ride height equipment outside on the pit apron. One of them was Tocqueville Motorsports, the new boys. They've just done their drive-through, and the other car will have to perform a drive-through as well in the first 10 laps of the race. Roman Rusinov clinging on ahead of Romain Dumas, and for Rusinov, who's quote, the gentleman driver in that G-Drive car, having somebody like Dumas behind, no pressure there at all, really, is there?
No, certainly Rusinov's got a bit of experience. He's not quite completely a gentleman in that respect, but he's definitely getting on with it. He's having to fight to keep Dumas back, but Romain wants to make a point as well. He wants to try and attack. Another person that I expect going to be attacked, this car here, number 2, Brendan Hartley at the wheel, and he doesn't want to see that disappearing Porsche up there in first place being his teammate when he's got 2 Toyotas in between.
Down into the bus stop. And already ferociously harvesting energy on every braking opportunity to be able to deploy it as you come out of the corner. And the lead stabilised to 1.5 seconds.
Good job, Seth. Good job, Jack. Watch out, rear tyre pressure. Is it still a little bit on the low side through Rouge?
They're talking about the rear tyre pressure coming down to Eau Rouge here now, and it's a big compression at the bottom of the hill before you go up over the top at Radion. And in that compression, if you've got low rear tyre pressures, then it can make the car bottom out, which can rub your plank and the piece of wood underneath. And if that is too low and too small, at the end of the race, you're disqualified. So the drivers are having to think about that, and you have to wait a little bit. So maybe on those laps, you don't quite go through flat out. Take a lift, use the opportunity to harvest some energy, and then use that energy at the top to boost, and then you gain the lap time back again. A bit of give and take.
Always a bit of give and take in sports car racing. That's almost its motto. Here is our lead battle in the LMP GTE Pro class. LMGTE, Davide Rigon from Oli Pla and Harry Tinknell, the two Fords behind the Ferrari. Then the fourth place car, still James Collado. They're easing away from Porsche's Richard Lietz.
Just a little bit of a lift there in the middle of the corner. That's incredible. It's a GT car, for goodness sake. They're flat chat through there in qualifying yesterday. In the race, just at the beginning, thinking about that double stint, just a little bit to take some load out.
Battle for second in the GTE AM class, the Dempsey Proton Porsche, the blue and checkerboard car. And there's the Top with Motorsport car that's already made its drive through, coming back through the field. And look at the way the LMP2 cars now just blow right by the GT cars. That's what that new Gibson engine has given them so much more top-end speed. In fact, so much more top-end speed that the hybrid drivers in LMP1 now are saying the P2 cars have got better top-end speed. Once you lose that hybrid boost and your P1 car plateaus in pace, the P2 cars actually can come by you. Battle under braking with the Porsche, which is at the number 92 car, slipping by the Aston Martin. So that's Kevin Estre ahead of Nicky Thiem.
You see there, just the one quick note, the fastest car on the previous lap round there was Toyota number 9 of Lapierre. He's just been beaten now on this particular one. But here we've got a bit of a battle coming down into the bus stop chicane with the Rebellion just looking down the inside of the Alpine there, not quite being able to get it done. But the Rebellion with Piquet Jr. trying to approach Panciati in that, and I can see them having a go up to the top of the hill.
And look how well the other Rebellion has fared as well. It was 5 or 6 cars back in the train at the start. So 13 and 31 trying to make progress. The 31 car, Bruno Senna, right behind Manu Collard, now underneath as he gets a better exit out of La Source. Goes by Manu Collard. Some really exceptional driver talent all the way through the field in the LMP2 class as well. Car number 28 with a drive-through penalty. That is the second car that must serve the penalty. That's Manu Collard for TDS Racing. And looking here at the battle for second, Mike Conway, Toyota number 7, pushing through perhaps the highest G part, lateral G part of the course. And now then, the Top with Motorsport team have been handed another drive-through penalty because both the cars, they and the 28 car, were due to take a drive-through penalty within the first 10 laps at the race director's discretion. Topwith came in and took it. They didn't read the entire question. Look, we're coming up to exam time. Read the whole question.
I don't think it was a question. I think it was a statement. You do it at our direction, and they did it. This is really unfortunate because they actually served their penalty, and they served it correctly. It just wasn't at the time of the race directions instruction.
They served it. They didn't serve it correctly. And that's the problem. Back then to this battle, the first of these 2 Spirit of Race Run cars, the silver car there in the AM category, and the Toyota's still jockeying for position. Now, Alan, at this stage, with so much of the race still to go, if you're clearly faster behind, it's about time the team, right, go, okay, number 7, you go by, number 8, you just follow him, let him punch the hole in the air for you.
Yeah, you can sort of think of it in every single way, because ultimately the car that we're riding on board with here is stuck up behind the Porsche as well, so he's maybe not able to go to his own speed. However, Kobayashi in this number 7, if he hadn't had a car spin on in front of him in qualifying, they reckoned they were on pole by 0.6 of a second. Yeah. So they do have real speed in that Toyota, and I'm sure that that's the thing that's sort of sitting in the back of their minds. They want to start to attack Lotterer. However, there's still 5 hours and 51 minutes to go.
A bit of racing left to go. LMP2 being led by Roman Rusinov, Roman Dumas. We've seen that battle. Here's the battle for third. Jean-Eric Verne just disappeared off our screens in that blue Alpine, now with both Rebellions coming up behind him. So Bart Hayden's crew having a very good start to the race. And the gap to the leader, Andre Lotterer, has come down. They've reduced it by a third in the last couple of laps. He was out to 1.6 seconds in front after 2 laps. Now after 4, back down to just 1 second at the line. And that gap is coming down again. Lotterer 33.5 in the first sector. Buemi in second, 33.3. And behind him, Mike Conway, the car in the slipstream of both of them, 33.1. But Nico Lapierre in the number 9, again the fastest car on the track in the low downforce Toyota. How long its tyres last remains to be seen. Number 8 again having a look at number 7 as they come up behind the Gulf Porsche. So what, we're 4 laps in and we're already in traffic. Catching Michael Wainwright there coming up to the bus stop and going by him like an absolute hurricane. Penalty under investigation as we see a replay of the number 7 car going around the outside. Sebastian Buemi just getting slightly held up there, couldn't get the power down all the way.
Well, he got held up through normally what's a flat-out left-hander where he'll be 20 kilometres per hour quicker than the car that the GT car ahead of him, and the sister car used that opportunity just to slide past Conway, using his head there, backing off and coming through. It's one of the things, there's an ebb and flow about racing here, but as you can see, Conway's already pulled a decent bit of a gap as well over Buemi.
Buemi in that number 8 car, 3 red lights on the side indicating he's 3rd in class. Red for LMP1, blue for LMP2, green for GTE Pro, and orange lights for GTE AM, and that's the colour of the background of the numbers as well. So 98, our GTE AM pole sitter, our leader, under investigation for grid procedures, and he's now in fact being passed by the top 2. Take a look at the start again, Alan. Disaster for number 9.
Well, you just see there's he goes in a little bit, he locks up the front, then locks up the rear as the hybrid starts to activate, and the only way is to abort and go straight on. Here you see it there, car on the left-hand side. Yeah, a tad optimistic, shall we say?
Yeah.
Yeah, bye-bye. I think Timo Bernard's been in that situation. He knows where to brake, and it certainly was about 20 metres earlier.
Even Toyota's Philippe Leloup had a wry smile on his face as they just watched the number 9 car shoot off into a different county. Replay of the start, courtesy of the Fords, a little bit of position swapping and a little bit of jockeying for position there as well. James Rosser in the number 4 grey car, just a little rub with the 24 car, Jean-Eric Verne. 34 has come in again, Tocqueville Motorsport. We're less than 12 minutes in and they've already served 2 drive-throughs, so they will go through. They've obviously been told now is the time to come in. And, oh, they're doing a pit stop. Louise Beckett down in the pits. We'll catch up with her in a moment. Let's hear from the 67 Ford team.
You slide slightly on the straight. Take the front left. Take the front left. Okay, tire pressure all okay at the minute. Can't see the rear because we haven't got telemetry.
Telemetry dropped off there on that Ford 67, and talking a little bit about check the front left tyre pressure. So he must be feeling something just through the steering more than anything else. A little bit of an inconsistency there for Harry Tinkle, who started that 67 car.
Well, let's hear the other voice of our team this weekend, Louise Beckett down in the pit lane, and you were just reporting to us off air, Louise. Tyres out for Tocqueville Motorsports number 34 car as well?
Yeah, the number 34 came in. There was a massive flat spot on the rear left, so that's the only one they changed.
Thank
Not
you very
a good day
much.
for them so far.
Not so far, but a lot of time for it to get better. So Louise Beckett down in a noisy pit lane, managed to grab a window of opportunity there without 30 cars streaming by, so very handy. And on board again with our lead battle, Mike Conway with the bit between his teeth, and the Porsche in front is Andre Lotterer catching the Aston Martin.
Here's an opportunity here, because they'll both get the Aston Martin before they come on. Oh, maybe not there before they come onto the straight. Looks like Conway wasn't 100% sure. Now through the flat-out kink, and then he needs to boost, and he needed to be a little bit closer to have I would have said, a square going to the bus stop chicane.
But of course, once you start getting into GT cars, Alan, as a driver, you know there's loads more of them coming up.
Now it's coming up.
So number 1 Porsche, both Porsches sidestep their own racing line to let him through cleanly. Don't shut the door on the Toyota, but we are now nose to tail. The gap of the line will be 0, effectively. Gone from a second to a car length. And now we'll see the ebb and flow of how and where you deploy your hybrid power.
No, well, now we're going to see when, whether they get caught up down through the bottom, because I think they won't be able to get past all of these cars before Eau Rouge unless they use everything on the hybrid boost and then have nothing at the top of the hill, which looks like what's actually happened here.
It'll be interesting to see. You heard him downshift there as well to try and use the petrol motor to boost him back up the hill.
Yeah, Lotterer was very clever that he used all of his hybrid boost, something he normally wouldn't do at that point on the circuit, to ensure he got past as many cars as possible before he came to the Eau Rouge corner.
And what he's done is two things. First of all, opened up ground between himself and Conway, and then tossed Conway under the bus as well, because now Buemi is right up Conway's exhaust. So Conway suddenly is less focusing perhaps on trying to get to the Porsche than he was otherwise.
The car that hasn't dropped off in that particular battle, though, Martin, is Lapierre in the number 9 that we saw going very wide in the first corner. He's on the Le Mans downforce. Now is going to be a telling point, because now coming through much more traffic, he'll have to go offline. And that's really where you do need downforce, especially at the beginning of the race when the rubber hasn't really gone down onto the circuit too much to give you extra grip and also a wide grip line.
Looking at LMP2 battle here with number 25, Orica, versus Manu Collar. Manu Collar's just been into the pit lane, in fact, so that's where he's come back out. He served that drive-through for the number 28 car, and so he's right behind Rodolfo Gonzalez. So all are mandatory drive-throughs. This was for just a slight technical issue. The cars have a laser ride height sensor, and you're allowed to use them in free practice, but what you're not allowed to do apparently is sit on the pit apron and then use it to check your ride height, and that's what both cars were found to have done. And it sounds like a trifling insignificance, but Alan, rules are rules. They're there for a good reason, and
they've been there since the rules were written 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's not as if it's something new, but you know, in terms of a new team coming in, it's maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding or not necessarily thinking it through completely. However, you know, it's there for a reason, as you said. And here we've got a bit of a battle coming up here. See if the Toyota can keep in the slipstream there. He's got it. There's a little wiggle at the top of Radion there, and I think it's going to come at the end of Lecombe.
So here we go on board with the chaser. This is Mike Conway, right in front, Andre Lotterer, and the piece of elastic has stretched a fraction, and now Conway brings it back in under braking.
There's a difference in the way Toyota and Porsche are going around about this circuit. I don't mean just because they've got slightly different aerodynamic packages. In reality, the Porsche package here is the same as at Silverstone, but it's probably ideally suited to this circuit, with Toyota maybe having a little bit too much on car 7 and 8, and on car 9 maybe a little bit too little. However, it was able to be quicker down to Eau Rouge, but then the Porsche boosts at the top of the hill with its hybrid, and that allows it just to stretch its legs a little bit. Looks like they've got more capacity in that Porsche to utilise the hybrid to get through traffic.
Francesco Castellacci in the silver Ferrari moves in front of the car of Christian Ried, the checkerboard Porsche. So the Dempsey Proton racing car down to third. Castellacci was ahead at the line, and then look down to La Source. Christian Ried, very experienced veteran racer, you could almost say, in Porsches, trying to have a go back at him. Pedro Lamy still leading the AM class, and no further word on whether whatever it was that they may or may not have done in the pre-start procedure is going to earn them a penalty. And another LMP2 battle. Rebellion tucks out from the slipstream as the Porsche comes under pressure. Is there contact at the bus stop? Block pass on the inside, or at least shuts the door on the inside. But now he's going to have a Toyota in both mirrors, Alan.
Yeah, there's a bit of aggression that's coming here. There's different boosting, and you see it looks like it's going to be 3 abreast here, but be careful. Look at car number 8 on the outside. 7 comes back through, and I think actually 7, by trying to attack, has dropped himself a position. 8 is back up with Buemi.
When you're in the middle of the sandwich, you're in the worst of all positions, because you've got to try and attack, but as soon as you do, you move offline, you leave the door open for the car behind you, in this case his own teammate, who goes, yep, thank you, I'm having that.
Well, clearly there's no team orders in Toyota. We can safely say that. Thank you very much.
And look, the top 5 are all still nose to tail. They are separated by just 3.5 seconds. So the low downforce number 9 car at the back is still hanging on. And again, the Toyota swap position. This is not just showboating. These guys, there are no orders, as you said earlier. They are now just racing for themselves, for their own teammates. In the end, of course, it all benefits the team because they're learning more about how the car works in traffic.
I think in that respect, Buemi took the opportunity to see whether he could take advantage and get into the lead. Ultimately, he wasn't able to do it. Conway still that little bit quicker. Here you see it again, down into the bus stop. Conway tries to get down, squeezes in. Lotter gives him enough room, and also coming out gives him enough room, but ultimately compromises both, and that allows Buemi with a free run as now Conway boosts and tries to go to the inside here. There's no way there, but Buemi's already round the outside.
Right from the moment he caught them, Buemi was going around the outside at La Source, wasn't he? Always was going to.
When the opposition go to the inside, you've only got one way.
There you go.
The outside, and Conway has blocked into there. He was hoping Lotter moved, but Lotter a bit too wily for that and blocked himself off. However, that Porsche is not quite as quick. We're only 20 minutes into this race, but he's not quite as quick as he was in the first few laps. They're able to generate tyre temperature. But look, there it's done. Round the outside. So now, now they've got the change where Conway's gone round the outside and taken the lead, and that's him into first place, Lotter down to second. And
they've been telegraphing that was coming, as you said. The Porsche escaped in the opening couple of laps, and since then they've reeled him back in, and it's just been, you know, the hounds have got to the fox, and it's a moment or two where the Toyota is in the slipstream, has the boost at the right place, and just cruises by into the braking area.
Now we're on board with Buemi in third, and he'll want to try to sneak past. This is not the area where they seem to be at their best, because it looks like the Porsche boosts up the hill, and at that point he was a sitting duck, to be honest with you, when Conway came to him there.
And when you're the hunter, Alan, you can move around to force the guy in front to try and overuse his boost, know what he's doing, and then keep that extra little bit of power for yourself so you can execute the move where you want to.
Well, if we just put it into context here, these cars have over 1,000 horsepower when they're boosting, and about 50% of that is electric power, and 50% of it is the normal internal combustion engine. So when they do activate their boost, it's a heck of a lot of difference. And so if you've not got anything, you've got 500 horsepower. If the other guy's still got a bit more of the 1,000 ready to go, then he overtakes you. That's one of the key factors of it. But what I see here is that Porsche is going to be struggling at the end of this stint with its tyres. Looks like they're not quite in the car balance and also able to keep their tyre in the same way that Toyota is.
So then we're going to see what the ebb and flow of tyre wear looks like as we get into the second stint for these drivers, because the likelihood is they will all stay in for a second stint on the same tyre. And will Toyota's early race tyre management match its later stint tyre management, or will Porsche somewhere find a little bit more? And this is something that Toyota don't know and Porsche don't know, and they're certainly not telling us even if they do. So again, so many questions at the start of these races, and you have to try and find out now.
Now this will be an interesting one. Here's Buemi, he's already through, and now it's Lapierre that is having a go at Hartley, but he went completely off the circuit in the slipstream through Blanchimont. If he had overtaken in the same way Conway did with Lotterer, there'd have been a question mark whether he'd been using off the circuit limits to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, there'd be no question that the race director would have told him to give the position back, because he went so far off there at the highest speed corner on the circuit. So
fantastic view, this one, coming down the hill from the helicam.
So the lead Toyota, Mike Conway, is already cleared off, over 3 seconds away. We've now got a two-car battle for second, and this two-car battle for fourth.
Even on its own, the Toyotas, and that's the low downforce car, is not able to drag back up to the Porsche there. We saw that exactly with Lotterer and Conway and Buemi earlier on, and it's exactly the same with the sister cars of the teams. It's just very much a case of where they're using their hybrid boost to gain the performance. And it's quite an interesting technical point from my perspective, because it's clearly there's more ways to do this circuit than just one.
Well, here again, the replay, the number 9 car goes way out wide there, and then can't find the long way round the outside. So good middle of the road defending by Brendan Hartley in the Porsche.
And funnily enough, there's just been a notification on our timing monitors that car number 9, that Toyota that went wide, must respect track limits at turn 17. That's the left-hander that we commonly call Blanchimont.
They're not alone. Car number 28, which is the TDS racing car, Francois Prodo and Manu Collard's car, that has been warned as well for abuse of track limits. And it's not normally when it happens for the first time. In fact, car number 9, not warned about running out wide at Blanchimont. It's at turn 4, which is as you climb out.
He's had 2.
He's had 2, yeah.
So he's being a naughty boy, basically.
Well, he's been public warned about turn 4. Now, one of the LMP2 cars just in the way of the battle, and again a run round the outside for the Toyota number 8. He's going to shut the door. He gets in between the the Ferrari and the Porsche, and closes the door on the number 1 car. Andre Lotterer could see that was not going to go his way and got out of it at the apex of the corner quite early.
Well, he defended and he kept it going as deep as he could, but ultimately he had to try and square it off and stop the car, because if he had kept on going into it, he'd actually locked up and probably slid into the side of the Toyota. But deciding that basically running over the curb was a safer option for the rest of the race.
Some photographer there on the apex has got a shot of Andre Lotterer's eyeballs and nothing else. He's so close to the wall.
He certainly was very, very close.
And it's not just the tightness of the corner there. The road actually drops away right by the curb, and so your wheel sort of leaves the deck, and
you get this big hit underneath the bottom of the car as well. So in terms of damage, you won't have done any damage because it's slow, but it certainly will have shaken a few fillings.
Mike Conway, Sebastian Buemi, Toyota 1-2. Andre Lotterer lies third ahead of teammate Brendan Hartley, with Nico Lapierre hounding the number 2 Porsche. James Rossiter, 6th of the LMP class, and that is in the LMP1 non-hybrid car. James Rossiter is a minute and a quarter behind the number 9 Toyota, and that gap only going to get larger.
Look at this GTE battle, Ferrari, Ford, Ford, Ferrari. It's like Le Mans last year when they duked it out on a big anniversary for the, I think it was the 50th anniversary of the Ford-Ferrari battle at Le Mans. And here they are doing it again in the rehearsal before we go back to the famous Le Mans 24 hours. The Ferraris were a chunk quicker in qualifying. However, the Ford seemed to have sort of gently came back into it, and it's only, what, 1.5 seconds between the top 4. Again, I would expect this particular battle to rage all the way until the 6-hour mark. It's just one that it just seems too close for anything else.
Here we go again, the number 31 car having a lunge. Bruno Senna and Nelson Panciatici. Does he get by? He does. Good pass. Good pass by Bruno Senna. And again, Alan, as a driver, that's one where you press the Jesus pedal, the footrest on the left-hand side.
There's certainly a point on this circuit when you're going down into there where you lose perspective of where the car you're overtaking is, and you require a great deal of faith in your ability and a heck of a lot of faith in his ability and his understanding as well. To go into Eau Rouge at the compression there, side by side, it takes certainly a large amount of adrenaline. Takes 2 to tango there, definitely, yes, and cojones like cantaloupes is what you need as well. Now, the number 98 GTE AM pole sitter and class leader, Pedro Lami's Aston Martin. The team manager has been told to report to the race director, so he'll be legging it up the stairs to find out exactly what they did or didn't do in the pre-race. Maybe that wasn't tyres on the road at 5-minute board or something like that. But that will hand a lead to the Ferrari of Francesco Castellacci. And again, Porsche number 1, Porsche number 2. Fastest first sector of the race for Andre Lotterer's car, at least for his car on this lap. And whether that's because he's being assisted, punching a hole in the air by the number 2 car behind, taking some of the drag away, or whether Lotterer is just feeling his car a little bit more now. Well, remember, there was a little radio message early on that tyre pressures, when they're low, don't go flat out through Eau Rouge and up through Radion, and so therefore tyre pressures, as expect, were a little bit higher now and able to do it.
Yeah, a lot of tyres, Rob. The car is very tricky to drive. Always see an entry on this surface corner.
Oh, that's not what you like to hear as an engineer, and certainly not what you like to experience as a driver. Oversteer on entry means the car's very loose. They're quick entries round here, and so therefore you've got to have a confidence in the rear of the car when you turn the steering that it's not going to swap ends on you, because you're swapping ends at high speed. And then from there, if you get understeered in the middle of the corner, then you've got no bite to come out. So it's kind of a little bit of a loss of everything. We said it earlier on when he got overtaken, first of all by Conway, then by Buemi. He had a bit of tyre issue and was struggling, but that's confirmation from Andre Lotterer. Remember us listening in qualifying yesterday to Brendan Hartley's debrief as he came back in after his hot lap on the new tyre, saying, okay, we got more rear grip than we expected. We can move the centre of aero a little further forward, and maybe they've done that. Now the temperature's twice as high as it was on the track, so maybe it's a little far forward for these
warmer and perhaps more slippery conditions than it was in qualifying in much cooler track temperatures yesterday.
It's very possible, but there's also some areas where you see that Romain Dumas actually, sorry to cut off on that one, he's managed to get himself into the lead with Rusinov. Now they're fighting back in second place as they overtake some of the GTE Pro Battle cars. And so Dumas has managed to get it done after 30 minutes, but Rusinov certainly isn't giving up.
And the LMP1 leaders are coming. Here we are. This is our race leader, Mike Conway. He's in the LMP2 lead battle stroke GTE Pro lead battle because they're both together. Dives inside the Manor. There is the Senior Tech Alpine right in front. He gets straight by there. And these LMP2 cars also with a lot more speed this year compared to the GTE Pro cars than they used to. They're making short work of the GTE field, and it's almost close your eyes, Alan, as a fan, and particularly as a team manager as well.
I'm kind of closing my eyes a little bit here watching it because I know the speed and I know the closing speed and how tricky it is to thread the needle through that section of circuit. And as you can see, it's like the M25 for those of you that know London, but flat out at 130, 150 miles per hour.
30 minutes in, and the leader has lapped the LMP2 field for the first time. And this is the faster, full-fat, new for 2017, 650 horsepower LMP2 field.
Yeah, and just one thing coming back to Andre Lotterer, who's in the Porsche up ahead as we boost down the hill with Brendan Hartley, is the fact that now in traffic, that's when he'll really be exposed to that instability of the rear of the car, because he can't, with total confidence, dive down the inside of the GTE Pro cars or the LMP2 cars into the corners likely.